All right, just kick off. Sorry we were running a bit late. The traffic is a bit mad, but thanks for your patience and hopefully got a tea and coffee while you were waiting. So thanks very much for being here this morning. We're Plan International, and we're an international development organisation that work across 75 countries around the world, and we fight for children's rights, but especially equality for girls. And that is why we were here today, to celebrate International Day of the Girl, which is tomorrow. So International Day of the Girl is about celebrating the power of girls and their leadership potential. We're fortunate enough to work with some of the most strongest girls and young women around the world. In Sierra Leone, we work with girls' groups who campaign against child marriage. In Mali, we work with groups of girls who go door to door around their communities to educate parents on the importance of girls' education. And even in Ireland, we work with young people through our youth advisory panel, which is for teenagers aged 16 to 22, who act as ambassadors and advisors to Plan International Ireland. And Kate, a member of our youth advisory panel, is on the panel today. And the reason why we work with girls is that we need to campaign for girls' rights, because girls around the world, they don't have it easy. A lot of girls are disadvantaged just because they are young and they're female. We know that girls that we work with in the developing, across the developing world, are more likely to live in poverty. They're more likely to be married at a young age and be a victim of violence or harassment. But we know that education is a tool for getting girls out of poverty, and it's an important empowering tool for them to realise their rights. And also, whenever girls are in school, that is when they kind of form their aspirations and have an idea of what they want to be when they grow up, which leads us to why we are here today, to have this discussion about the role of that and girls' aspirations and their leadership and fulfilling their potential. So before I hand over to the panel, I'm just going to play a very short video. And thanks again for coming, and look forward to an engaging discussion.
Why is the world holding us back?
Girls want to lead change. We want a better, more equal world.
Nuestros familiares o la ideología de nuestra sociedad está limitada hacia las mujeres.
Y no debe de haber ninguna discriminación.
We are excluded from the decisions that affect us in our homes, our communities, and in the corridors of power. Just a quarter of parliamentarians worldwide are women.
9 out of 10 girls said that they believe as women leaders they will suffer discrimination and harassment.
Yo quiero que las niñas de mi comunidad sean valoradas y tengan las mismas oportunidades.
A society where women will not be put aside because of their gender.
It's time to change the face of leadership.
Preside lideranza feto Cletán.
Líderes como Malala. Ella es una mujer que luchó por la paz, que luchó por todas aquellas mujeres.
It's time for communities and families to nurture young leaders.
Create an environment where women and young girls can feel free to express themselves.
គ្រប់គ្នាគួរតែស្ដាប់នៅអ្វីដែលក្មេងស្រីនិយាយពីព្រោះមានតែកុមារីទេដែលដឹងពីតម្រូវការពិតប្រាកដរបស់ពួកយើង
When we see more women in leadership roles, we're more empowered to think that we can change and become like they are.
Support us to succeed with education and leadership opportunities.
Leadership tem que investir em a minha educação.
Leaders must include and listen to girls when making important decisions.
It's time to challenge sexism and discrimination.
Utilizo mi poder para retar la desigualdad de género que hay.
This कारण म मेरो समाजमा बालविवाह छिटै अन्त्य भएको हेर्न चाहन्छु.
Chỉ khi nào em gái bình đẳng thì mọi người mới bình đẳng.
We will show everyone a new vision of leadership.
Create a room and amplify girls' voices.
If we respect women and we give them a platform to exercise their abilities, we can have a transformed society.
Nosotras las mujeres somos fuertes y poderosas. Ya es hora de que nos vean tales y como somos.
We want girls and young women to be making decisions, to be safe to speak up, to end the stereotypes holding us back.
Ahora somos las lideresas que nuestra sociedad y el mundo necesitan.
Let's change the face of leadership.
Okay, so I'm delighted to hand over now to Diana, Kate, Razan and Louise to kickstart our International Day of the Girl celebrations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I think it's going to be an intimate enough celebration today, but no better crowd to discuss a really important topic with. I don't know about you, but I found that video particularly inspiring, and I loved that little girl who said that she's using her power, she must have been about 10, to challenge gender stereotypes and inequality, because now more than ever we do have a power in our hands, and it's amazing to see children in countries who once upon a time probably never thought that they did have value, worth or a power or something to offer, to feel so empowered, and that's thanks to the great work of Plan International in the many countries around the world that they work really hard in and support. So today we're here to discuss a particular report that Plan International did in teaming up with Gina Davis Institute of Gender in Media. And they analysed the top 56 grossing films from 20 countries across the world. And the research was really interesting because as much as we celebrate how progressive we are and how far we're getting on with women in powerful positions, this showed us something a little bit more different, and perhaps we're not as progressive as we might think. So the research found that women and girls are very rarely represented in film as leaders, and even when they are in those leadership positions, they're more likely than not portrayed as sex objects, which men very, very rarely are. The world's most popular films still show a world that is run by men and for men, and whether it's presidents, prime ministers, entrepreneurs, business executives, the message to girls is that leadership is generally for men. Overall, 42% of male compared to 27% of female characters were shown on screen as leaders. Male characters spoke twice as often as female characters, and female leaders were 4 times more likely than males to be shown wearing revealing clothes or very little at all. Again, female leaders are nearly twice as likely to be shown partially nude than male leaders, 15% compared to 18%. And of course, there are exceptions. There's films like, Ocean's 8, where we have like amazing women in the lead roles, Wonder Woman, and so on and so forth. But the majority in the 20 countries that they examined, this wasn't the case. And I think it's just really, really sad. So I just wanted to talk to our wonderful panel today that include the amazing Louise McSharry, broadcaster and author. We've got journalist and human rights activist Razan Ibraheem, and then Kate Smith, from Plan International's Youth Advisory Panel, who is currently working and studying to be a primary school teacher. So all very powerful, strong, intelligent women, and they're going to give us an insight into their worlds and what it's like to be a female, breaking boundaries. So first things first, maybe Louise, we'll kick off with you. What are your feelings on the findings that we've just kind of gone through here with the Gina Davis Institute?
I suppose it's not very surprising. To me, it's not very surprising because, as a consumer of media, obviously it's something that I would notice. I think once you've heard of the Bechdel test, which is kind of a measure of women's representation in films, I think I'm going to get this wrong, but it's basically that 2 women have to have a conversation with each other in the film that isn't about a man. And most films fail that, which that is pathetic. 2 women having one conversation, about something that isn't a man, and once you become aware of that, I think it's hard not to have your eyes open to the imbalance and inequality in film and in television. I do think that things are improving. Definitely over the last 5 years, I think we've seen great improvements. I think the Me Too movement has probably made changes in Hollywood and made people who maybe were resistant is giving them less of a choice. I think it's now become kind of cool to be progressive and to be a little bit more conscious of gender stereotypes and of gender equality, whether it comes from a sincere place or not. As long as we get the end result, I'm fine with that. So yeah, I wasn't shocked. It's a shame, but I guess all we can do is try and just move forward, and I think highlighting it is part of that.
And Razan, what are your opinions? Did you feel much the same like Louise?
Absolutely, I echo, and I think in general, media, film, and all this industry is reflection of the society. The media in general is a better version of the society, and still these results is expected, and it is improving, I'd say, from this region, Europe and America. But I always want to reflect as well what is happening in the Middle East, the region I come from. This is really the comparison between what is happening right now here for empowering women and representing women in the media is way, way more advanced than what is happening in the Middle East. There are steps, but they are very slow because there is a huge resistance from the government, from the society, from the religion, stopping this movement for women. For example, I'm going to give you some titles of movies, of Arab movies from the region a few years ago. And the titles, for example, of this movie, The Devilish Woman, The Woman and the Devil, The Woman Curse, Girls and Mercedes, The Infamous Woman, Virgin But, A Woman from Fire. So these kind of as well representing these women from the region and how they have a stereotypical pictures of them and they don't want to change it. So what I'm finding right now is just really expected progress, but as well I think it's not only here, the whole world need to wake up more. And we need to think of the people here, the women here, but as well there are million of women living in outside Europe and they need help and support and they need voice as well.
And that's where someone like Plan International comes in, because they work really hard all around the world to support change and make changes, and most importantly, educate girls and women, and we champion them for that. Obviously, Kate, you work with a lot of young children in the classroom. Are young girls more aware than perhaps we would have been at a young age of the power that we have and the fact that actually we have a voice? Are they more vocal in the classroom? Are they more expressive? Do they have dreams and ambitions that go beyond, you know, playing with Barbies or being a model?
Yeah, definitely. I think now, instead of like when a few years ago, whenever girls were vocal and talking out in the classroom, they'd be seen as bossy or things like that. But now they do believe they have more power, and rightly so. But it was actually interesting because when Plan International was talking about that the International Day of the Girl was going to be about STEM education, I went to one of my science lectures and was asking her opinion on STEM education. Obviously, she's been in the industry a lot longer than I have. And she then passed me on to this fellow student of mine, Mairead. She did her whole dissertation on young girls' views on STEM education. And she basically went into the classroom and asked the girls to, it was a mixed class, asked them to draw a scientist, and the whole class drew men, and the girls didn't even question it. They just drew the classic man, like lab coat, didn't question that maybe it could have been a female. And then she was trying to explain to them, like, you doesn't have to be male, like you could be a scientist, and obviously she'd work then over the next few months with the kids, bringing in guest speakers, guest scientists, doing work, showing the girls that they do have this power. So though I do think girls in the classroom do believe they have a power, there still is kind of a bit of a gender imbalance, and it's just, you mightn't realise it or you mightn't think about it, but it's little things like that that bring it out, and you kind of notice it more then.
Absolutely, but it's amazing to hear that there's amazing teachers that are working really hard to kind of obviously challenge that. As we know, like the environment that we immerse ourselves in and the things we're subjected to, the things that we soak up and that we see as children very much affect kind of our view of the world and where we fit into it. So I want to talk about when you guys were growing up and when you were children and what you thought, what you thought you wanted to be, what you thought your place in the world was. Louise, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it's important to mention that I did most of my primary school and secondary school in America, and there's an attitude in America which we kind of make fun of sometimes in Ireland, that like everybody believes they can do anything, and we make fun of it. But I grew up in that, and I did believe that I could do anything. I did feel very empowered. So like I found a school project of mine recently from when I was about 10 or 11, and it was like I had to. It's kind of dark, but I had to write my own obituary. It was supposed to be about focusing on your achievements, the things that you'd achieved in your life, so you could kind of picture how your life was going to go. And I was like, oh, she won an Oscar, and she won an Emmy, and she was also the president, and like I just thought I could do anything and everything. So I feel like growing up in that mindset was really good for me. Now, it didn't necessarily make me a lot of friends in the classroom when I came home to Ireland, because I did put my hand up whenever I wanted to, and I did always have something to say because that's the kind of person that I am. And I remember when I was in 5th year, or 6th year, I think it was, a guy in my class, just in English class, which is like my favorite, so I did always have something to say, just was like, shut up, Louise, nobody wants to hear what you have to say. And I was like, ugh. And it wasn't that I hadn't considered it before. Like I had considered it. I knew I was outspoken, and I knew that probably wasn't cool or good or whatever. But I just can't help it. I can control myself a little bit now. But it was really upsetting, and it really kind of put me in my place. And I remember my English teacher took me aside the next day and said, "Did he apologize?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, I asked him to, but he didn't." And it didn't matter because the way he had made me feel was not going to go away. And I do feel like that kind of stifled me a little bit and made me kind of less willing to speak up. And then as I've grown up, I've had, just recently I had a meeting where, someone told me I was difficult. And I was like, I'm not difficult. I want to understand things, and I'm not going to just agree with everything you say, but that doesn't make me difficult. And I couldn't help but wonder if I had been a man in that meeting standing up for myself in the way that I was, would he have called me difficult or would he have called me confident? And I just think all of that kind of stems back, it all links together from I think what was instilled in me from a very young age, which was that I had a voice and I deserved that voice, and that it was worthwhile and what I had to say mattered. In terms of like media, I think, certainly for me, the media had a really intense impact on how I saw myself in terms of how much my appearance mattered. And for me, it definitely created some major body issues because there were no bodies like mine. I've always been a larger person. And I always thought that was wrong, and it was something that I had to fix, and that I could never be accepted. I could never work in TV, for example. I certainly could never be in films. Once I passed that age where I thought I could do literally everything, I got to a point where I was like, no, I can't do that because I'm too fat, because I didn't see myself. And I think I sometimes wonder if that's one of the reasons that radio was so comfortable for me, because it's not about your appearance. Although these days it is, because you have to be everything. But back then it wasn't. So I think, and that's, kind of a small thing, but I think what it shows is that representation is really important. And, that phrase that they're using for women in sport now, can't see it, can't be it. I think that counts across the board. If you don't see yourself represented, whether it's your ethnicity or whether it's your religion or your physicality or if you have a disability, people with disabilities, that stuff is really important. So it's not just about having women represented in film and media and TV. It's about having different types of women, because we're not all the same. Just like there are lots of different men across the board, there need to be lots of different women across the board as well. That's a very meandering answer to your question. I apologize.
But yet a brilliant one.
I've just got so much to say. I can't help it.
A brilliant one nonetheless. I particularly loved kind of you touching on the language surrounding women, confidence, ambition, because I myself had the experience of I was always a believer that like you, anything is possible if you work really hard, if you push the boundaries. I'm intelligent, I've worked hard, I've earned this, I deserve this, I'm going to get there. And I remember I did an interview, and then the headline was a steely ambition or a steely determination. And I was like, why does it have to have such a cold connotation when being ambitious is a wonderful thing? Yeah. It means that you have loads that you want to achieve, loads that you want to learn, loads that you want to share with people, and that's never attached to a man, much like you questioning the difficult, being difficult.
Well, as Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie says, you can be ambitious but not too ambitious if you're a woman. You can be confident but not too confident.
There's always a limitation. Yeah. Which is such a shame, and it's definitely not the way that it should be. And I think we're getting better by having conversations like these and challenging the language that is associated with women and their character and how they carry themselves and portray themselves. Razan, I know you had quite a different upbringing growing up in Syria, and for a lot of people, like we read a lot about Syria, we hear a lot about Syria in the news, but we can't fully imagine what it was like to grow up there. So can you talk a little bit about what it was like to be a young girl growing up in Syria in the culture that we may have like a particular stereotype of, and where you saw your place in the world as a young girl?
Absolutely. So I wanted to be everything, but I didn't feel I can do everything. So it was a huge challenge between what I wanted to do, and I know that there are a lot of obstacles in front of us, especially the stereotypical pictures imposed on little girls. And this kind of stereotypical is literally on the basic little small things on daily life. For example, playing football. No, it's only for boys and for men. For example, even riding a bicycle. This is not a girl thing. It is mainly boys can doing. Playing outside, for example. No, it's just inside. You play with a doll and the boy would have something different to play with. For example, car, gun, etc. This is a huge, diverse between the two the two genders back home, and it's actually the whole region. It's not only one particular place. So there was a huge challenge for me because actually I refused to obey that, and I didn't want to be like that. I want to be a human being, ordinary girl, nothing more. So, but it's not easy to challenge your parents, your family, and the whole society is watching you because they are expecting you to finish your studies, then get married, have a children, and this is the end of your life. This is the end. You can't go further. Marriage is the end of your ambition, of your life, of everything. Your mission is to bring and have children. And I didn't want that. I couldn't. I simply really couldn't do that. I felt I have so much to do. I wanted to do a lot of things. I have so much to show, so much to learn from the world. And I decided, no, I'm not gonna obey these rules. I'm not gonna obey this society. Okay, I'm gonna pay high price, but at least I'm gonna do something that I'm convinced. And this is what I believe I should do. And I am now 39, I am not married, and I don't have children, and I love my life, I enjoy it so much, and as well to work and to do tough job. For example, what I'm doing right in journalism, even in Ireland, journalism for women is kind of a struggle to go easily to, but still, it's something I believed I wanted to do, and I really worked hard for it. I studied a lot. I learned a lot. I talked to a lot of people, and just to have a space and a path for me to go to. But as I said, the unbelievable picture that it is so hard to break, and especially even in media, even in school curriculum. I'm not sure about Ireland, but in the region, if you see a picture, for example, in a school curriculum, you will see a man is reading the newspaper and the woman is washing dishes. Or the girl is playing with her doll and the boy is, for example, playing with a car or a gun, for example. So it is embedded in the society. And it is maybe the oldest system in the world that it's still happening and is still going there. To break this, it is extremely important, but I have to say there are amazing steps and there are amazing movements from the people in the region to empower girls, to empower women, to make them just feel normal, ordinary. This is why always, we don't want to be somebody different. No, we want just ordinary people who have little dreams, ordinary dreams like anybody else. So these are the challenges, and I believe that really our ambition as Plan Ireland is doing actually is looking after these girls from outside Ireland, from outside Europe, and taking care of this. Because if we're gonna build a world that we all like, we can build it from here and forget the rest of the whole world. It's really like effort from everybody in the world to make it better.
Amazingly said. And I love that actually when you were a kid, you played football. So from the get-go, you were like, no, I am not going to fit into that mold that you all want to put me in. And if you told, like, 10-year-self you that you would one day be living in Ireland, working as a journalist, you know, going to Greece and meeting Syrian refugees, like, would you have believed that? Because it seems like there were so many limitations on what your future would hold that you probably would have been like, oh, that's not going to happen.
I never, ever, like, when I landed in Ireland in 2011 to do my master's in UL, I really couldn't believe. I just couldn't believe that I really, like, what do you say, this, pinched myself to really, really I made it after all these years of like working hard, and especially at the start I couldn't pay the fees of Limerick University, and it was like international fees are extremely expensive. So I didn't have the money, so I had to work 10 years to be able to save the fees for my university, and really couldn't believe after getting the visa and arrived here. But this is what I always say, when the society is open and understanding, and there is law to protect you, you feel empowered, you feel you are stronger, you feel, yes, I can go forward, I know there are people around me, they are going to help, support, and there is a law that it is protecting me as well. So that was part of it. And then actually, I think Ireland is a place, if you want to do something, if you want to achieve something, go ahead. And I think you can reach what you want.
And Kate, having grown up in Ireland, do you feel that we are very much that type of society? If you want to do something, you can go and achieve it. Obviously, you had a very different upbringing to Louise and to Razan as well. You're a little bit younger too. Not like, not to point that out in a bad way.
I am 12.
But like, yeah, we all are. But like, how did you find your experience growing up and the ambitions that you want? Did you feel supported? Did you feel like, you know, you could achieve anything at all, no matter how crazy or wacky or out there it might be?
Yeah, I mean, we always had, like, it's not like years ago when basically women were only given the option of nursing or teaching. Like, I know I'm in the teaching profession, but I did it knowing I enjoy working with kids and looked at all my other options. And I had the option to be an engineer or to be a mechanic or whatever I wanted, but I chose teaching because I enjoy it. But at the same time, I think it's interesting what you're saying about, like in the textbooks, like girls like maybe doing the dishes and then boys like washing the cars. Because like home economics years ago would have always had that kind of like tradition as well, where they'd be like, I remember they showed us like old home ec textbooks, and it was something like you should have your husband's slippers warming by the fire for when he comes home, like all this stuff. But it's still interesting because now home ec is still very much a female dominated subject, and when I was picking my Leaving Cert subjects, I didn't get my subject choice. I wanted accountancy and music, and they were on the same time, so they were like, okay, pick one, and you have this choice between, it was history, home ec, or woodwork. And I didn't really like history, so it was kind of between home ec and woodwork, and I had done neither of them for junior cert. And I was okay, I've done neither for junior cert, like how am I going to manage? And they were like, oh, you're probably better off doing home ec, so like you don't really have a clue about woodwork, do you? And I was like, yeah, but I don't have a clue about home ec either. Like, but they pushed me towards that because obviously female, like that's the connotations that, oh, you like to cook and stuff. And sure, I was naive and 15 or 14, whatever it was, and went with home ec. But sure, I was useless at home ec. I probably was better off in woodwork in the end of, but sure, that's the way it is. And I just think it's interesting. There's still female and male subjects, and even in all girls secondary schools, they don't have the same options as an all boys secondary school. The boys schools mightn't have music or art or home ec, and then the girls schools mightn't have woodwork, metalwork and tech graphics. And obviously we've improved a huge amount over the years, but there's still like little biases that you're kind of like, hold on a sec, that's not completely right, is it? I just think it's interesting. But
absolutely, and we should have, if in all girls schools especially, access to every single class that boys in all, you know, in all boys schools have, and likewise boys should have the opportunity to do home ec, because you could have a really great chef in the class and he doesn't even know yet. He'll be opening up Michelin restaurants in futures to come, and we're just limiting that talent and ability by not giving them the chance to explore that, which is, you know, obviously we're talking about men, they're really sad, but it transcends to females as well. Can you remember the first woman that you saw, you know, as a big role model, and you were like, she's badass. I really want to be like her.
Yeah, I actually saw in the video as well, one of the girls said the same. It was Malala Yousafzai. I remember in transition year doing a French project on her, and I just thought, because she's only a year older than me, and she had done all this amazing stuff and stood up for what she believed in, and I was like, how are you doing that? And here I am stressing about this project on you. Like, she was just incredible. And I was like, if she can do that, if she can survive like the shooting and go on and study and promote education and raise money for something she really believes in, I was like, yeah, we can do anything.
And what are the kind of role models girls have in school today? Like, who do they look up to? Is it who we would think, your stereotypical pop stars, or do they look beyond that, like astronauts and...
I think it's a bit of both. In primary school, a lot of girls look up to their teacher or their mum, so they're like, oh, I want to be just like you when I grow up. But then I think obviously in secondary school, as your horizons broaden, you take more inspiration from maybe the novels you're reading or the films you see. And I know when I was growing up, I was a huge reader, and I was in love with Hermione Granger from Harry Potter, and I was like, she's so badass, like I want to be like her. And even like Nancy Drew and stuff. And I think girls do have more like female role models to look up to. But even if you look at like Hermione and Harry Potter, Harry was the main character, and it's still like a male-led film, but there's still inspiration to be taken from the female characters. Even though they mightn't get the same screen time and stuff, they're still just as powerful of a character and someone to kind of look up to. So I do think it's important that we need to have more female representation in movies and stuff. And nowadays, I do think there is more of that. When you look at the movies, like you're saying about Wonder Woman and Ocean's 8 and everything. But yeah, like growing up, we had kind of a few kind of cool, I suppose, female characters, but it was more like a lot of the like High School Musical, and where it was like the storyline was a girl and a boy, and kind of there wasn't as much as there is now. So I do think we've taken a step in the right direction, but definitely needs more representation.
Absolutely. Razan, who did you look up to as a young girl? Who was the first woman you saw and you were like, do you know what, she's really cool, I'm going to be like her one day?
I mean, I have my aunt, like she's as well very strong woman, and she struggled a lot in her life, but she was still really strong and confident and continued despite all the difficulties. However, I would say the woman that actually really I found her the first model for me was my school principal. So I was a teacher in a school, and I went to Kuwait to teach, but the school principal, she was unbelievable, confident and strong, and managed the whole school, around 1,000 students with hundreds of teachers, unbelievably, amazingly. And our school was the best school in the country for about 5 years. We were #1. And just to see how inspiration she was to the whole teachers and to me. And this is, although she came actually from conservative background, from conservative society. But actually, when I looked at her, I was like, wow, I'm so impressed by this strength that she had, and how she made this place like really a paradise for everybody. And the impact she gave as well for students. So this reflects straight away to the students. And it was a girl school, so all the teachers and the students were women and girls. So as well, she was a big inspiration for them. And she emphasized a lot on the role of education. So actually, yeah, I mean, that would be maybe the first model when I say that's so impressive example of a woman.
Louise, I'm going to have to ask you the same question. And then just to add on to that, how do you feel knowing that you're a role model to so many girls, like your followers, for example, your listeners, and what do you do to make sure that you empower them?
Well, I think I was trying to think who were my very, very first people who I would have looked up to, and they're both cartoons, but they're actually good cartoons. So for me, it was like Jem from Jem and the Holograms, which is a cartoon of like a rock band, a female rock band, and she was the band leader. And also She-Ra, Princess of Power, who was also really powerful. So I'm like, I wonder if that had an impact on who I am. But then I think Oprah for me, because I lived in Chicago for 10 years, and like Oprah owns Chicago basically, but she, like initially I just knew she was this kind of powerful media woman, but then as I got older and I started kind of watching what she does, and she's a big role model for me. I mean, I don't agree with her about everything, and like I don't love everything that she does, but the way that she created her own industry, basically, I just really admire, and the way that she chose to use her power, I really admire as well, and just the way that she, as an interviewer, I really admire her. So that's just getting into techers. So how do I feel about the fact that I am potentially a role model for people? I take
potentially, you definitely are.
Well, I take it very seriously, but I think for me, what's at the heart of everything that I do is honesty and openness. You know, I never try to pretend that I'm something that I'm not. I mean, it would be disingenuous to say I never pretend I'm happy when I'm not, because we all have to put a brave face on it sometimes and pull our socks up and go out and do our work. But like, I will admit if I'm struggling, and I will admit if I'm having a bad day. And I think that's one of the reasons that I have, say, the Instagram followers that I have, is that I do express vulnerability. And I think it's really important because, you know, we could all potentially feel completely alone in the world if all we're ever presented with is perfection or people who seem to be happy all the time. Like, that's not realistic. So I take my, like, being honest with people very seriously. But also, you know, for me, a lot of the stuff is because, as I said earlier, like, there was never a big woman, you know, well, Oprah at times, but there was never a large woman, you know, in media or in magazines or any of that stuff. And these days, I like a little bit of that has kind of crept into my life, and it wasn't something that I kind of sought out, but we'll say, for example, I've been nominated now twice for a VIP Style Award. Thanks, guys. And like, again, that's not something that I like was working towards or like something that I particularly consciously want. But when it happened, I was like, no, this is actually really cool and really important, because I will be in that magazine, and someone who's reading their granny's magazine will maybe see someone who looks like them, and that actually matters. So I take that very seriously. So I take more kind of, I don't know, fashion opportunities or like, you know, magazine-y kind of stuff or things like that, just because I don't think that there are people like me in there. So I suppose that's something that I would be conscious of. You know, I'm really honored and grateful to be in the position that I'm in. I've worked really, really hard. Like, I'm nearly 37. You know, I've been in this industry for 16 years. Nothing happened overnight for me. I've had to beg and knock and annoy and beg and knock and annoy, and you know, I didn't get here overnight, as I said. So I want to share what I've learned. I want to help other women get to kind of similar positions. I do my best to, you know, encourage and empower my female colleagues who are maybe a little bit younger than me. You know, I'm open to advising, because I just basically want it to be all women all the time.
Like this situation right now.
Yes, I'm very happy here. No offense.
Sorry, there are a few gentlemen in the room.
Thank you. Thank you, by the way.
You're very welcome.
You know, you had to fight the fight,
yeah,
and now you're here to talk. But I almost feel like men have it a little easier at times. They don't quite have to fight so hard, because they don't always necessarily have to work so hard to earn those positions, because it's almost a given that they'll get them. Yeah. Eventually, are we all in unison on that belief?
And especially, I think the most important, confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they are born and their family straight away would give them the chance. Oh, go play outside, travel, do this and do that. So the confidence would come natural with them.
Yeah.
It's different from, I think, from most of the women. I don't like to generalize at all, but still most of the women, like straight away the girl, don't go here, don't do that, don't. This no is always in the head, and it makes us feel not confident. It makes our self-esteem low, because we are always subjected to negativity. Whereas the boy, let's say from when they were raised up, it's just totally different approach. The parents, the mother and the father, they just let them go wherever they want. 11, 12 at night coming back, they don't even question where were you, for example. Whereas us at 8 maximum, 8 p.m. I have to be at home. And then where did you go? How did you do? Who did you meet? Blah, blah, blah. You know, like a lot of things to get. So that is important. I think the confidence is the key. Mm. Once we get it, once we give this to our children, boys and girls, that is, I think, the key of change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, reflecting on my own upbringing, like I grew up in Eastern Europe, and I very much had parents who instilled in me, like, you can have anything you want, you can any dream, it's not too big. You can achieve anything you want, but there are also those limitations of where did you go? You're not allowed. Come home at this hour. Dad will pick you up at this time. So it is interesting that you bring up. It does kind of sometimes stem to actions in the household as well. But like, I'm grateful. I was always safe and looked after and always had a lift home. But yeah, my brother had a completely different upbringing, and it's a really important point to make.
But it's funny, just that confidence thing, because if you export that into kind of other areas. So like one of the things that they always say when they're trying, because women complain that they're not represented in media equally when it comes to even like panel discussions or contributors on the radio or whatever. But one of the complaints that producers always make is that women are less likely to put themselves forward to contribute to programs because they may not feel like they're expert at something. So basically a man who knows a little bit about something will be like, yeah, I'll do that. But a woman who knows like 90% about something will be like, oh no, because I don't know 100%. And it is that confidence thing. It's there at the bottom all the time.
That's seen as well, actually, in primary school teaching, because obviously it's a female-dominated industry. But there's kind of like a joke where I'm in college, Mary in Limerick, like if we're studying for something, the boys won't put in half the work, and they're like, there's no point, we're going to walk into a job, like, because obviously there's less males. But now I don't know the exact statistics, but we were actually looking it up to try and prove one of the boys wrong. That's how petty we were being. But there's something like 30% of primary teachers are male or something like that. But then the amount of principals, it's like almost 50% are male. And it just shows like there's such little representation of males in the primary industry. And I do believe, yes, we need more males in the primary teaching industry. Like boys need to see that they can be teachers too. But it's shocking then in the actual positions of power and the principals and the people that are running the schools, it's
still men.
Almost 50-50. Like how do they get from such a small representation to huge representation? And again, apparently it's because, they claim it's because females don't have the confidence to go for the principalship and they don't believe that they can do it, but they can definitely do the job just as well, if not better than men.
And I just would like to add another thing, that the image as well, that we are aware of our image more than men. Men, they don't care how they look like on the TV, for example, whereas I think in general we will be a little bit cautious on that. And why we are cautious, it's not because we are from inside, women are cautious. No, it's because of the media industry,
the conditioning,
and because of all of that. They are imposing pictures on you that you feel you cautious, and we shouldn't, like we should just, whatever I look like today, I don't care, I'll go on TV. Whereas the men, they don't have this media like imposing these pictures on them that they have to be another person who they are.
Yeah, and there's also then feedback now, because you've got online feedback. So for example, a couple of years ago, I got a phone call from The Tonight Show on Virgin Media. It was TV3 at the time, and they asked me would I come on and talk about something. I can't remember what it was, but it was something important and something that I felt strongly about. Now, I was in work and I had a baby at the time, and my work is in radio, so I had not dressed for my job, and I knew I looked awful. And I had just scraped my hair up into a bun. I didn't really have much makeup. I threw a little bit of makeup on. I had some trash blazer in my car. Like, I did not look the way that I would normally want to look if I was going on TV. But I wanted to talk about it. And I said to myself, if I was a man, I would walk straight in there and it wouldn't be a thing. And I remember after I talked about whatever it was, there was, like some guy on social media being like, oh, you look like an old granny with your bun on top of your head and your lips are so thin, they're this and blah, blah. And I was like, this is so irrelevant. It's so irrelevant. But how can we feel like it's irrelevant if we're getting that feedback and that pressure at the same time?
Yeah, it's a very difficult place to be in sometimes. But where social media does have its downsides, but in terms of giving women a voice and being able to kind of express themselves, it is also an incredible tool. So while we may not be represented in kind of traditional media and print, TV and radio, there is this whole enormous platform that opens up the whole world to women, where they can speak about topics they're passionate about. They can be activists, and it is an incredibly important tool. And I know that you probably, I don't know about you, Kate, but I'm sure you're all equally as active in your own rights on your social media platforms. And like, Razan, how important do you see that as a journalist?
Absolutely.
How important of a tool do you see it?
It's extremely, extremely important, especially us, like, coming from as well tough countries, like from the Middle East, because we didn't have any way to express our opinion or to show who you are or to say what you think. We didn't have it. We didn't have any democracy to reflect of what we believe, or to any political system or anything. The only tool for us at that, especially like from 27 on, was social media. It was the only tool to speak, to say, I exist. Before, your voice is not heard. And this is what we see, like a lot of women in the Middle East and the whole region. They are starting campaigns on social media, raising awareness, telling stories of women, telling stories of abuse, telling stories of like negativity around women, but at the same time highlighting the amazing stories of women from the region who are really, really fighting non-stop to change the constitution, to change the patriarchal society, the whole kind of negativity around them. So it is a huge tool. If the government is not doing enough, if the society is not doing enough, okay, so stay there. We have the social media to say what we want, to advocate what we want. And actually, yeah, I mean, especially like from this region, the change could start from there. And this is like Arab Spring is another example, because the change in Arab Spring was started from social media, and then it was reflected to the street. And this is what we are trying to do as well. So it's like important tool to make your voice heard.
It puts the power back in our hands a little bit, and it's just a small bit, and then hopefully with people jumping on board, it grows to something bigger and bigger. But like even in business, we're talking a lot about like film and media, but even in business, I think there was the Fortune 500 list, and only 6% of the top 500 CEOs in the world are female, a 2% increase, which we're celebrating. Woohoo, we're up 2%, which, Louise, like we were saying, it's great that there's progress, but it's still very measly in the context of this massive list. 94% of the list are men, which is ridiculous. And it probably does stem back to the fact that we do lack the confidence. We are put in boxes. Well, we lack the confidence. We're made to believe that we lack the confidence compared to men. We are put in these boxes. What can we do to kind of make a change? What can every woman out there do to kind of help contribute to a greater change? Obviously, it's going to stem from people in power and people who have a voice, but in everyday scenarios, what can we do? Is it starting conversations? Is it educating, youngsters around this topic? What can we do?
I think this is actually reflected in the International Day of the Girl campaign that Plan International is involved with. That's not happening tomorrow. We've loads of our youth advisory panel, which is made up of a mixture of male and females between 16 and 22, but they're all going out and they're taking over like CEOs, academics, politicians, basically areas where females are generally underrepresented, and they're going in and standing in and showing, and it's through like the hashtag Girls Takeover and the power of social media that they're hoping to get the word out that we can be in this position of power, we can be here, and it's kind of a way of representing. And it's only one day of the year. Well, I know there's a few events this week, but like even that one day is better than no day, and it is a starting the conversation, and it's getting girls out there and able to see that they can do it.
And it's not even we can be there, it's like we should be there. It's we have the right to be there, and we will be there. Louise, Razan?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's really, as I said, representation, like it's seeing women in these roles is really important. But I also think that childcare is a huge, huge part of that for women getting to the top of any field. Because it's one thing to take, 6 months off or a year off or whatever from your career, and I've now taken 3 breaks. I'm in the middle of one right now, apparently, because I had 2 kids and I was sick, so I've had to take 3 periods of time off from work. And the reality is, those short periods of time, like you can recover from that. Like that's actually not a big deal. Like nothing much happens in those 9 months or 6 months or whatever it is that you take, for the most part, in most jobs, in most industries. But what doesn't recover is if you continue to be the person who's responsible for everything to do with your kids in your house, and if childcare is so expensive that maybe you don't even go back to work because you can't afford it, or if you have to constantly take breaks because you're the one who has to take the day off if your child is sick, or if you can't prioritize your work anymore because you're unsupported. So I think until that's addressed, we're always going to have inequality. And that's about men stepping up in the home and in their partnerships. If you're in a male-female partnership with children, it's about whoever it is in your house supporting you and taking your career as seriously as theirs. And it's also about systemic support and about childcare being readily available and flexible and affordable, so that women can go back to work, because you can't be a CEO if you can't go back to work after you have a baby. And the fact is, women are the only ones who can have babies at the moment, and I wish they would sort that out, but it's just the way that it is right now. So I think it would be, we can't have this conversation without mentioning that, I don't think.
I totally agree. Really, the management and talking to CEO and then the childcare is extremely important. And I believe as well that we can start from educating parents, like from the start, from the bottom, to educate parents that they should treat and they should give the same opportunities for boys and girls. Number one. Number two, education itself, the schools, that as well should be extremely embedded in every school. That is the mission of the curriculum, the school, to make girls going forward, building their confidence, making opportunities for them to speak up, to do projects, to do a lot of work. So that is, it will build the confidence inside. And I think as well, social media, as we were talking, it's good and positive, but the impact of social media is as well, especially on girls, is, I think it is, part of it is very negative impact. And recently, I don't know why, I am seeing on my Facebook, face app that you can make your face younger or make your no wrinkles and all. I mean, why? And why these people in this ad are all girls? Why this indirect message to the girl at that age, young age? This is what you should do. And so I think in this case, girls will live in a bubble. They will be only social media representing themselves. So when they go out, they are not the same person on social media. So they feel less confident. They feel less capable of doing things. So I'd say, really talking to Facebook, talking to Instagram, to Twitter. These apps shouldn't be on the platform, or even ads on how to lose weight, how to look more beautiful, how it should be totally stopped. So girls will feel, no, we are I don't have to. They have to think and believe it's inside here. It's inside, wherever you are, wherever you look like, if you are not confident and not happy and reconciliate with yourself from inside, it is hard to continue. So I'd say 3 steps should be embedded, but social media, it should stop promoting this image on girls.
And there is someone fighting that fight very hard, and it's Jamila Jamil, and she's already got Instagram to stop promoting, I think, diet shakes and things like that to girls any people really under 18 years of age, which is incredible. And I think with more people like her, feeling empowered, being strong, and standing our corner, we will make waves. It's just going to take a little longer than we probably would hope. Thank you very much for a really interesting discussion. Tomorrow is International Day of the Girl, so what a great way to kind of kick it off. Does anyone out there have a question they want to pose to the panel at all? Yeah?
So thank you very much. That was an amazing discussion. Myself and Annie work in a very female-led industry, but it's owned by men. So we completely get everything that you're saying. But we happen to work with a lot of amazing females, and working with females, you really see our natural abilities. And Louise mentioned vulnerability, which is one of them. Empathy, creativity, all of these things, compassion. All of these things which are sometimes seen as a weakness. And I just wonder, as we're leveling out the playing field and building this, even playing field, is there a risk or a danger that we lose some of these inherent qualities that we already have, or at the very least, stop celebrating them for what they are, which for me is female empowerment, you know.
I definitely think that at one point it felt that way. You know, at one point the kind of picture that was painted was like, if you want to be in the boys' club, you have to be one of the boys. And I think that things have moved away from that, though, a bit, I hope. And I think that as more women get into leadership roles, like my whole thing is, I want to get to the top. I don't particularly want to be a manager, but in a way I'd love to be a manager because I would love to throw all that out the window. You know, I'd love to model sympathetic, empathetic, vulnerable humanity in management. You know, because I think it's anytime that I've worked with a leader like that, whether it's a man or a woman, it's been just so an unbelievable working experience, and it means that I've given more to the job, and it's just better for everyone, better for the industry. So I hope that because we have conversations like this, there is less pressure for us to become these hardened ladettes or whatever, that like we can actually just be women and find strength in our female qualities. And I hope that men, you know, through feminism will also embrace those qualities and will move toward us rather than us moving toward them, and you know, we can all be happy in the end.
Because feminism is a movement of equality, movement of compassion, movement of respecting and understanding each other. This is the movement of feminism. So that's why it is important, and we shouldn't lose it. Absolutely.
Completely. And I think as well, that side of the vulnerability and the compassion is coming in a lot more with like my generation. I know there's kind of like a bit of a running joke where they call it the snowflake generation because we always show our emotions and stuff like that. And
yeah,
I think,
God forbid.
I think that is coming in a bit more. So we do see that. I don't know whether it's just because the females are getting more power now and it is slowly moving that direction, that there is more like compassion and empathy, or whether just males are seeing females in powerful positions and are like, oh, well, if they're allowed to do that, we can do that too, and they are becoming more empathetic and stuff. So I do think it is slowly kind of phasing in, but again, it is slowly, and the issue is, why is it so slow? It should just be moving along.
And it's hard when you're like us and you're still working for men and you're still having to deal with the old way, you know, but I guess I'm kind of relatively optimistic about the future. I hope we don't have to give up all of that, and I honestly don't think we do.
For a brilliant panel discussion. Thank you for your time this morning, and yeah, let's all celebrate women, get conversations started, and hopefully next year those percentages will rise higher and higher with women in mainstream media and in top CEO positions in politics and everywhere else, standing out and proud. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Rihanna.